Hey folks, it's Jack from Peach Guitars here again. Thanks for tuning in to another video. Today we've got Marc from Taylor Guitars. We're here in advance of the Taylor Roadshow we've got this evening. So by the time you see this video, I'm afraid you'll have missed out, unless you've come along of course. But we put these roadshows on quite frequently with great players like Marc, just to show off everything that Taylor do and have got to offer. And speaking of which, that's why we're here right now to talk about this brand new guitar, this new range from Taylor, and specifically we're going to get onto the V-Class system, which is kind of the big new breakthrough in bracing. So tell me a little bit more about what you've got in your hands, and then we can get onto the new bracing as well.
Well, the one that I have here today is really special. This is our 614 CE Builder's Edition. And we have the Builder's Edition guitars. What we typically have is something that Andy Powers, our master luthier, puts together. He says, if I want a guitar for myself, what am I going to build? So he'll do a lot of kind of extra bells and whistles on this guitar. Of course, it features the V-Class, which we can talk about in a minute, but this specific to this guitar is maple back and sides. We've got the torrefied top on it. It's got the armrest here, the beveled armrest, but it also has this cool bevel down here. And part of that is because with V-Class, we find that the notes up high are much more usable now, and so we want to have access to them. Yeah. Another thing that's kind of cool for Andy is that he put this, what's called a silent satin finish on it. And what that is it's something that, if you sweat a little bit, sometimes the guitar will squeak, and Andy does a lot of recordings, and sometimes there'll be some of those squeaks in there. So he actually designed a finish that won't squeak when it gets a little bit wet. So, if you're playing out live or
that's thinking through the details. For sure, yeah.
It's kind of cool. You think about, you have that ability to be in a factory and you've got all the tools to make all these things. Like, well, you know what? I don't want my finish to squeak, and you can go and actually make your own.
Yeah,
it's kind of neat. So.
Well, that's a nice thing about Taylor, isn't it? You're all about for the players, exactly what players need in gigging environments, recording environments. So I guess this guitar is just taking what was already great about 6 Series and then just amplifying those little features that needed maybe a little tweak for the modern player.
Yeah. That's well said. I think what's cool for V-Class, for those of you guys who aren't super familiar with it, V-Class was something we came up with, I should say we, but Andy really came up with as a way to compensate for the difference between volume and sustain. And with traditional X bracing, the challenge is you can't really affect one without the other. Yeah. And a lot of times people don't understand how volume or sustain works on an acoustic instrument, but it has to do with the bracing on the top of the guitar. The more tightly the top of the guitar is braced, or the stiffer it is, the more sustain you'll get. And a great example of that is if we think of a Les Paul. It's a big chunk of wood. It's probably, hit a note, go out and have a bite, right? Come back, still ringing. But you can't hear it unless you plug it into one of these amps. And the opposite of that, if we look at a banjo, if you hit a note on a banjo, it's basically a drum head on the top. Very flexible. So the more flexible, the more volume we can get out of the guitar. And so with X-Brace, it's always a kind of a zero-sum game, meaning if you've got 50 points of volume and 50 points of sustain, if I want to add 10 points to the volume, it's going to come at a cost of 10 points to the sustain. And the opposite is true as well. So when Andy started developing V-Class, he really wanted something that he could tweak those independently. So one of the misnomers is that now we have unlimited sustain and unlimited volume, and that's not really the case. It's really something that we can tweak them independently and kind of give each one its own power.
It's nice just to defeat that rule and be able to abide by your own physics almost, isn't it? Because it's a completely different ballgame when you're talking about acoustic properties and how they're going to translate sonically. Like you said, an electric guitar, you can always rely on an amplifier and effects to get whatever you like. When you hear Marc playing, what you're going to hear is just a fine balance that you wouldn't expect out of most acoustic guitars, and that's simply because there's brand new technology in there.
Yeah, one of the things when we demonstrate this guitar, if we have time for it, I'll do it, is that we tend to focus on areas that are traditionally weak on most acoustic guitars, and we kind of show you how the consistency, I think, is one of the most relevant parts of this instrument. It's consistent across the entire fingerboard. All the notes are full, they're round, they have their own power. But on top of that, something else that came out was a little bit more perceived in tuneness, we call it. The intonation seems to have improved, and the logic behind it is that when we think about intonation, we always think about compensation, meaning the distance from the nut to the saddle and having the right distance between the frets and those types of things. But to hear Andy Powers tell, he said, really, intonation is something that's really a combination of compensation plus harmony. And harmony is how the notes come off the top of the guitar. And in your traditional X-Brace guitar, where you've got the X under the top here, you've got those 4 quadrants, and the notes come off a little bit uneven. And as they do, it sometimes creates sour spots on the guitar. And with the V-Class brace, with V-Class, if you can get a shot of this, it kind of starts at the bottom here and comes up in a V. And what that does is this V gives us strength down the center line of the guitar to give us that sustain that we want. And then it kind of opens up the lower bout here a little bit to have a little more flexibility, which increases the volume. One of the byproducts that came out that's maybe more than we would have imagined, is that we get less warbling, less beating, notes decay a little bit longer, and the harmony, because the notes are coming off a little more evenly or a little more orderly, we would say. Everything, just those dead spots kind of go away, or those sour spots. And so there's a couple demos I'll do that I think are really cool.
Yeah, please.
The first thing is, just hitting one note. I'll just, this 9th fret on the 3rd string, or the E on the G string. Listen how the note, it's clear, it's warm. This is traditionally a challenging note on acoustic guitars. And it just keeps going. And it's still going now, right? As you walk up, I'll go kind of quick on this. But each note's clear. All the way up.
That's really interesting. It might just be where I'm sitting behind the guitar, but you feel that in a certain way that you don't normally get from acoustic guitars, whether it's just because you're normally in front of them or directly behind them. But
no,
there was something really interesting about that.
It's that round. They still sound very full as they go up. They don't thin out. And I think that's what I kind of noticed with it as well. Check out this. So the intonation part that we were talking about, you play a 12th position E chord. I'm going to throw that extra G sharp up on top. This should typically, one of these notes should die off quick. There should be some warbling, maybe a little buzzing, or something that just won't sound typically quite right, or they won't all ring at the end. And they're all 4 ringing, right? And sounds like a piano, right? If I go first inversion B chord. And you certainly know the worst offender, right? If you do a 2nd inversion G chord up here.
Yeah, it all just falls right into place, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you used the term earlier when we were just playing around earlier, you said about like a mandolin.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of very percussive attack, but it just decays in just the right way, doesn't it? Whereas some guitars you find the notes just still ring out and stick out, and like you said, you've always got a worst offender that's always the one.
There's one that just falls off a cliff. My favorite thing I saw Andy Powers do, it was so cool. He played this 1-5-1-5. Typically, if you want to expose a guitar's weaknesses, play octaves, right? Especially high up on the neck. Yeah. So a lot of times I've tried this on a million other guitars, and interestingly enough, you can do this on a bunch of guitars, and people will say, well, compare the V class to the other. And we do it all the time. And sometimes it'll sound great on some other guitars. It doesn't necessarily mean this isn't going to sound good on another guitar. Yeah. But then a D chord down here might not. It's
that might just be that guitar's strength, yeah.
Right, and so here though, if you play this, what you'll notice is that that's 2 pairs of octaves on the highest note of the guitar, and it sounds like a harp. Which every time I do this demonstration, I still think it's not going to work because I don't expect it to work from 35 years of guitar playing or whatever it is. The mandolin thing we're talking about, if you take chord shapes play them up, the tuning's there. And then what's, you think about when people play guitars, what do? Especially acoustic, they just strum chords, right? So we kind of show some of those weaknesses and how well it performs there, but what's really, really exceptional is down below on the open chords that most of us will play. What I found is there was chords, Andy Powers told me, he goes, Mark, play chords that you've taken out of your chord vocabulary. One of them was this G. I never put a B on the 5th string for many, many years. It always sounds bad. So I did, I thought, okay, well, let's try it. Let's put it to the test. So I started playing some chords. I hit this chord. I'm like, that sounds to me like I've tuned the guitar for that chord. And traditionally in the past, I've done that for songs on recordings that I've done where I want to make sure the chord was perfect. I would tune it for a specific spot. But traditionally, if I do that, if this G's in tune, my D is going to be a little messed up, right? That's kind of what we see happen. But if you notice here, then it becomes, sorry about that, it becomes perfect, right? So try it one more time. Without me smacking the mic. And if that D's in tune, then my E chord might be out. Or my E minor, so that G sharp up against the nut. C should sound terrible. It's perfect, right? Another one, the chord that I gave up forever ago was 1st position F chord, because that first finger up against the net always pulls those sharp. Listen to this. And then people will often ask, well, how does it fare with a capo? Or I think you guys call it a capo out here. Yes?
Yeah, capo.
Capo, excuse me. Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, sure.
If you play a 1st position bar chord, right? They're all ringing right, but as you move up, the tuning's there and all 6 strings continue to ring perfectly. And if I can pull this off,
there we go.
It's amazing.
It's funny, isn't it, that you have to distill it down to the basics and just think, okay, I'm actually going to think about basic open chords and how it's different. And it is so different. And that's a really interesting byproduct of that new technology. I mean, I don't know if you know the backstory as to how Andy sort of kind of stumbled on that or created that, but what was his thinking behind using that kind of design to achieve these results? Because it kind of just been something he'd stumbled upon. So I guess he must have known there were certain...
Well, the Thomas Edison story, or the Benjamin Franklin moment, or the Steve Jobs moment.
Yeah.
He often goes to the beach because we're out of Southern California. He's a beach guy, and so he's down at the beach one day, and he likes to watch the waves. Apparently, when he can visually look at waves, he thinks about them in terms of sound waves and guitar building, and he's got all these crazy ideas. Well, he was watching a wave come in. I think he said it hit a jetty or a seawall, and it came in and it hit the wall, and the wave just kept going even on both sides after it split apart. And one crashed onto the shore, and one goes into the harbor, or whatever happened there. Mm-hmm. But noticing a wave break in the ocean and watching it in real time was part of the catalyst of this. And if you think about that, it's kind of like the sound coming out here.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
And what we kind of discovered is the top rocks side to side a little bit more, and it throws the notes off at the same time. And what that does for us also is gives us a lot of projection. So if you... real clean, real articulate, but also the projection, everything kind of comes off so seamlessly that all of those potentially notes that might want to clash with each other kind of stay out of each other's way.
Right, and you were picking really softly there as well. You were picking really light, and every note, like you said, was just sticking right out there, but nothing was jumping out a little too much.
Yeah, if you dig in a little bit. Still just stays clean. The notes don't seem to get in the way of each other, and part of that traditionally is part of the maple, but it also does this on every other B-class guitar we do. It's kind of had that effect across the board.
Yeah. So it's just it's a player's instrument is how I would term it. And I've had a little bit of a play on these a couple of these V-class guitars, and I'm pretty heavy-handed, particularly on my left hand. Right. So I tend to push notes a little sharp sometimes. Didn't really notice that with that guitar. No. And if it is, then it just it still just seems to fall into the whole picture. It all just seems to kind of clean up and sound right anyway. So can you just talk a little bit about how the V-class system is going to apply to the ranges that Taylor offer? So is it on every guitar now that's shipping out of?
No, not at all. Right now, what we started was originally, there's been some prototyping going on for, I think it's been maybe 3 or 4 years now that's been in the works for being prototypes and trying different versions. We came out with it at NAMM show this year. And we did it just on our Grand Auditorium and just on some more elite series guitars. Because we wanted to introduce it and wanted to continue to work with it and see how it was received and all that. Throughout the course of this year, we've gone across everything from our 300 series up, which is our American-made guitars, up with V-Class just on the Grand Auditorium body shape. And so the question we get every night at road shows, is this going to be on every Taylor? We really don't know. If it works on all of our different body shapes, which I'm sure we're prototyping those. If we know that it works, then of course we'll use it if we love it. But we're not just going to put it out there to put it out there. If it's not better than what we're doing now, we won't do it that way. And part of the story with V-Class also was that we were kind of, with X-Brace, you think about, I think X-Brace, I want to say it's been around 180 years on different stringed instruments, and in that time, there's been thousands and thousands of builders building great guitars. I mean, Taylor included, but Martin, Gibson, everybody else building these incredible guitars, and everybody's tweaked it to their own special formula. And it's gotten to the point where X-Brace has kind of reached its maximum potential. We could probably do something different, but maybe not necessarily something better. And so this was an idea where Andy wanted to have more runway, and Bob wanted more runway for the future of Taylor guitars to be able to continue to innovate. I mean, I think most of us know that Taylor guitars is really, it's about innovation and accommodation. We're not the legacy company. We're the company that's always trying to push the boundaries.
Yeah, we're certainly doing that. And just have a question for you as a player of these guitars. When you've been around enough acoustic guitars, you get to know the fundamental properties of certain tone woods, certain maybe scale lengths, certain body sizes and styles as well. Would you say that this new bracing pattern kind of changes what you might expect out of some of those typical body styles, if you know what I'm saying. So, for example, you know what a 614 would typically sound like.
Right.
With this new bracing pattern, would you say that that's kind of changed your assumption of when you pick up a guitar and do you think, I didn't expect this kind of wood combination, this body size to sound like that? Do you think there's something in the bracing that's done something different to the tone?
It's definitely done something different to the tone. I think, you know, for the last 12 years or whatever it's been doing road shows, we go out and we play all these guitars, like you say, and when we play them, we listen and we get used to what they should sound like, and then we talk about them. We try to use words to describe what they sound like, right? And I think what we're finding with V-Class on the guitars I've played, they just seem to almost encapsulate a little more of what we've been saying. And what I mean by that is, say that we said, okay, our new 614 we came out with in 2014, where Andy redesigned everything, right? It came out, it was warm, it still had a kind of a quick decay and a nice attack, with a little bit of sparkle on top. It had a lot more warmth and low end.
So that had already redefined what people might think of as a maple guitar.
Right, and then this just kind of takes it even more so. It's almost like all those tone woods are just a little more exaggerated to be how we've described them. Koa sounds more like Koa, the way we've talked about it, or Indian rosewood sounds more like rosewood, the way we've talked about it, that type of thing. It's almost like, it's like going from HD to 4K. Everything just sounds a little more clear, and that's a really, you know, probably lame analogy, but you get the idea.
And that might be really helpful to the customer that's looking at acoustic guitars and doesn't have an idea of what they want. Right. That new kind of, like you said, exaggeration of those properties might help people distinguish the differences a little easier and pick a guitar that's right for them. Yeah.
I think, you know, something I just thought when I look at these lights, it's like X-Brace and some of our other guitars, the way they sounded before, they were more like an incandescent light. Nice warm glow all around them, whereas these are almost a little more LED, where they kind of project out a little further and a little bit clearer. You know, and one's not necessarily better than the other. It's not like we're saying this is the greatest thing ever. We're just saying this is something we really like and we think it's really cool, and we love some of the benefits that come with the better intonation. Yeah. You know, something people often ask, you know, who is the guitar for? And I'll tell you a couple of quick, really cool stories that we talked about at the NAMM show this year, and that is, I got one of these last December before it was introduced, and I had it for a while, and I do private lessons when I'm back home, and so I had one of my students play a G chord. I said, just play a G chord on this guitar. It was tuned perfect, hit chord. Eyes lit. I was like, I didn't know I could sound that good. You know, super inspired. He was really excited to play guitar. Mm-hmm. And
because it sounds like you've recorded a chord in a studio.
Yeah, he just never played it. He never played one that clean. He was playing on a Squire Strat and hit a G chord, and it was just all over the map. And here he hears this perfectly, this really clean chord. Mm-hmm. And so it definitely inspires when you listen to it. I think if you're a vocalist, you know, you're singing to pitch, to have a guitar that's more in tune, or, you know, sound more in tune, that's gonna be great for vocalists. There's electronic music, as you know, and you guys know we got the Logic, or what do you have going on over there? I think it's Logic.
Logic, yeah.
Everything in there, if you go into any of those instruments in there, all the plugins, everything's perfectly tuned, you know, and typically people do vocals, they'll throw some auto-tune on there as well. Well, traditional acoustic guitars, because they're a little more all over the map, or a little less consistent, it's having a hard time finding a place in electronic music. Whereas something like this, where if you're playing these chords that traditionally might be challenging, and it's pretty darn clear, it's going to fit easier into those mix, and I think that's something that's important. And then, like, you know, I came in, you were just killing it on guitar with these demos, you sounded fantastic. This is a guitar for you for sure, because if you go, say you get hired to back up a vocalist, this guitar is going to make you sound great, and you're going to be able to do the job obviously well, but if you're doing solos, or you're playing rhythms, or just tracking your own stuff, it's absolutely a guitar player's guitar.
Yeah, that's certainly natural territory for Taylor in general. I've always seen them on stages, big and small. Usually in big bands as well, like you said, and they just have their place, and they sound perfect for the band. Yeah. But they can sound just as great on their own as well, as you've just demonstrated. So thanks for that, Mark. There was a little bit on the V-Class system. The new 614 as well sounds fantastic. What we're going to do now is jump over to some more of the electric offerings that Taylor's have got. So bear with us a second, and we'll see you in a moment. All right, guys, so we're back with the electric side of things now. This is something that often gets misinterpreted and maybe a little misrepresented from Taylor. This is a T5z Pro, correct? Yeah.
This one's in the grapevine finish, which is our,
I was going to say, beautiful top. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Check that out. Roadshow special, yeah? So this has been made just for these kind of...
That's right. Anybody that hosts the roadshows will play them out. I do demos on these every night, and what's really cool is that, You say misinterpreted. Yeah, people don't know what this guitar typically is. So I thought I'd walk you through it. And I want to watch you play it because I want to see if you get it as I talk you through it. The T5, it came out in 2005, and what it is it's a hybrid guitar, and it's a true hybrid, meaning it's all done with wires and magnets. There's no modeling on the instrument going on. There's a lot of guitars that try to do this where they'll have some modeling or whatever, or they use a piezo in the back. But what we did here is we actually married our expression system, our original one, with electric guitar pickups. The T stands for thin line, so if you hold it up, you'll see it's a thin body guitar. It's also fully hollow, so it's really light. The 5 is for this 5-way pickup selector switch right here. And that's selecting between 3 onboard pickups, of which you only see 1. You see this true humbucker in the bridge here, but there's also a humbucker under the neck. And if you tap on the back of the top of the guitar, there's a body sensor there, and that's what gives us our full frequency response for our acoustic side of things. We have active electronics because there's a high definition preamp on board, and that active electronics means there's a 9-volt battery in the back of the guitar, and that just powers the preamp so that we have the ability to add to or subtract from the 3 parameters. The 3 parameters being volume, bass, and treble. As we see them here, if you hold it like this, you'll notice they're in the kind of the 12 o'clock position. That's going to be line level for your volume, and it's going to be flat for the EQ, but again, we can add or subtract for those.
And these are indented as well, like you said, like on the ES2 system. So if anyone's familiar with that, it feels exactly the same.
Yeah, you turn it, it'll lock you right in the center, exactly. And what's cool about that is we're often trying to get different tone woods out of the acoustic side of the instrument, so by tweaking the lows and the highs, we can really achieve that. And so it's shorter scale length neck, so it's 24 7/8, like our grand concert, so it's a little bit easier to play. It does come strung with the high string being an 11, but because it's a little bit shorter scale, it plays like a 10.5. So
it just feels, I mean, obviously it's got a slightly different feel, but it feels like an electric guitar. It doesn't feel like an acoustic guitar trying to be an electric.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we did. Our original T5 was more of an acoustic guitar, kind of feel like electric. It had a flatter fingerboard, it had medium frets, whereas we made this fingerboard a little more radius, put some jumbo frets on it, made the body shape a little bit smaller. So yeah, you picked up on that, that's cool. What's neat about it, some of the things we try to think about, who is this guitar for? And there's a lot of people that are in top 40 bands. You have your dinner set, you play some acoustic stuff, you get into your classic rock set. The set goes on later, and people start having some fun, you playing dead songs, who knows. If you think about worship teams, a lot of the worship leaders love these guitars because they want some acoustic stuff up front, they throw in some of the pedal stuff, maybe the edge type delays or whatever. Country artists like them. In fact, most guitar players now are really kind of both. We play acoustic and electric, the modern day guitarist. So sometimes it's a utility thing. California, I love to tell this because where I live, there's tons of casinos now, and these casinos have brought on a lot of tribute bands. And so people are playing in tribute bands. If you think of an 80s tribute band, every song started with a G chord acoustically and turns into some burning distorted solo with spandex or whatever. And this guitar kind of handles most of those things really well. And you're going to test it for the first time. We're doing this kind of backwards where he's demoing it so that you'll see exactly what the reaction is. We'll see how it goes. But we start in position 1, which is this switch all the way forward. We're utilizing the neck pickup, and we're utilizing that ES1 body sensor on the back of the guitar. So this is just direct into the software, and this is your most acoustic sound. So I'm just strumming.
Yeah, okay, so you're going to hear 2 different sounds here. This one that I'm going to play now is running straight into a radial DI, straight into our recording interface, and then we're going to also switch to the Mesa Boogie Triple Crown, which is behind me as well for the electric parts, and I'm going to tell you when we switch. So this is the DI tone.
Well done. Okay, now say if we were going to sing. We're going to sing a song. We wanted to have a little more bass. And we're not going to. No, neither one of us. We won't do it. But if we were backing up a vocalist, we might want something that sounds a little more rosewood. So we'd probably want a little more bottom end, a little more top end, scoop out that mid range a little bit. And the controls on the front, I'll have you do it. This is bass and treble here. Just bump the bass up a little bit and then hit the string on this. There's a little more bass to it. And then one in the front, bring that up also. Bring the treble up as well. Maybe the same distance you did. And you hear the sparkle on it. And those 2 middle strings almost disappear a little bit. Now, say you're going to be the lead guitar player and you want to play solos that you might play on your electric guitars, but you want it with more of an authentic acoustic tone. What we'll typically do is we'll take the lows and the highs, those two knobs, and bring them both down below the D10 point there. And by doing that, we're going to kind of have that mid-range curve, but then we lost a little bit of volume. So you've got your 6 decibel boost on the volume, so you can turn the volume up a little bit.
Right,
so maybe,
okay.
Maybe pull those back. Pull the low down.
Okay, so here's what we just had.
And then bump the volume to compensate. There, a little more mid-range push. Play some with some bends and solos up. Sounds great. All right, flat everything back out, right? And you can see just in position 1, we have all those different sounds. So from an acoustic perspective, it makes it really very customizable, and it's pretty quick. Once you get those knobs down pretty quickly, you'll go in and out of them quickly. If we go to position 2, bring that back 1, tap on the top of the guitar, you'll notice that body sensor is gone now. In fact, put it back on, try one more time, tap, on, and then off. Once it's off, it becomes a full electric guitar, and the next 4 positions will all be straight up electric guitar.
Okay, so it's just the 1 acoustic sensor and then 4. All right, okay.
Yeah, so once we're here, now we're using the neck pickup exclusively. Just think neck pickup. It's like a neck humbucking pickup, so whatever you play on there, so just kind of go to town with that and see what you think.
So we're going to switch back to the Mesa Boogie amp now, so we're neck humbucker, yeah?
Yes.
Super clarity though.
Yeah. And the EQ still holds true. If you thought, hey, that's a little boomy, I want a little more chime, you can roll the lows off, bring the highs up, whatever you want to do there is kind of cool.
Okay.
As we go to position 3, do you want to try some drive on there?
I was going to say, yeah, we'll try a bit of drive and also try a bit of the EQ. So EQ's flat at the moment. I'm going to move to channel 2, which is a little bit of a crunch. Even that tiny bit's effective, isn't it? Yeah. Just to help not keep things too muddy.
Yeah, it's not like a tone control so much as it's like having a little EQ right on the face there, and it's real touch sensitive. Go to position 3, which will take us back 1. This becomes our humbucker on the bridge. Any really heavier rock stuff you're going to do, you want a ton of gain, or you want that great searing solo stuff. You'll find this is great for that, but it's also great in the clean setting with. Well, just go through the channel, see what you.
Yeah, okay. So I'll start clean, then we'll hit channel 3 for a bit of that.
And
exactly what you're talking about.
And then flat out the EQs if they aren't already flat, and just kind of start there always.
There we go. They're flat. Yeah, volume's flat. So here we go.
Now hit your AB box and hit position 1. And immediately, you're right back there. It's pretty cool, huh?
Playing that for the first time, that's really strange.
Right.
But it works really well. It works much better than I expected it to.
Yeah. It's just one switch up there and going to AB box, and you're literally from full acoustic to blowing distortion. If we go to position 4, it's going to utilize the neck pickup and the bridge pickup. These 2 pickups are now running what we call parallel. Both pickups are hitting the preamp at the same time.
Yeah.
And this is great. Any jazz chord comping stuff, anything that just you want more smooth, clean stuff, you'll like it there. But also the drive stuff sounds fantastic on there as well.
Okay, let's see. That's nice, really nice, rich but smooth sound as well.
Yeah. Try rolling the highs all the way down on that setting, and even bump the volume a little bit to compensate.
That's nice.
You play great, man. I love your sounds. Really good stuff.
Hey now.
Hey
Thanks
now.
very much. Let's try a bit of drive there. That's nice. That's a big sound. Go back to clean.
All right, position 5.
Last but not least, yep.
Same 2 pickups, neck pickup, bridge pickup. We're running these what's called series, so one pickup's running through the other. And I'll lead the witness a little bit here. In position 4, we have a little dip in the mid-range and a little dip in the volume. Okay. So when we flat out on position 5, it'll kind of flat that EQ out, give us a little more volume back. So for me, if I'm doing, medium distortion guitar lines like solos or whatever, I'll do Pink Floyd stuff on there. I find it's a great choice for that.
Just a big fat sound.
Go with like your heavy distortion, a little delay on it or something. Just you can get some really neat lead tones out of it. And obviously you can do clean and rhythm and everything else on there as well.
Let's see what we got. So here's a lead sound.
And lastly, put the volume on that. Take that 6 decibel boost and watch I'll drive it even a little more when you're in that same position. You can get a little more out of it as you go on to it.
Okay, let's start with Unity and I'll bring in that boost as we go.
And then AB box back to position 1. You're out. Right? So it's silly, but it's
I'm liking it. One last thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to run through each of those 4 electric sounds with a little bit of crunch so you can hear exactly what they're doing. They all sound really good. So everything back to 12 o'clock. Here's position 2, which is the first electric sound. It's position 3. Four. 5. I like that a lot. I'm a telly guy, and that appeals to me because those 3 main sounds of the neck, bridge, and the middle all sound great, and then you've got that series option as well.
All right, try one last one. If you're a telly guy, go third position 3 right in the middle there.
Yeah.
Roll the lows off significantly. Middle one kind of, and then roll the highs up a little bit.
Okay.
And go with that middle crunch tone. Play some country licks.
So we're going to get spanky, yeah?
pulse, man.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room to play around with it. And the cool thing about it is you're taking one guitar to a gig often, you know, and it covers most of it. It's not going to replace your favorite Strat or your favorite Toe. It's not that guitar. It's
really lightweight as well.
It's just comfortable to play. You're playing the same thing all night, and you just have a variety of sounds.
Yeah, and it looks great.
Yeah, right on, man. Great playing,
Sounds
dude.
great.
Killing me out there.
Thanks,
Really nice
Mark. Well,
stuff,
thanks for all the info. I hope you guys took a lot from that. I certainly did. Genuinely, first time playing one of these guitars tonight. I think it's great.
You nailed it, man.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thanks
man.
a lot for that.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.